Rain hammered against the metal roof of the workshop, each drop sounding like a tiny hammer beating out a rhythm of failure. Owen Fletcher sat hunched over a workbench covered in broken tools and half-finished projects, staring at the eviction notice in his hands. 30 days. That was all he had left before the colony authorities threw him out on the street. He crumpled the paper and tossed it toward a corner, already filled with similar notices, unpaid bills, and rejection letters. It bounced off a pile of scrap metal and landed in a puddle of oil. Perfect. Just like everything else in his life these days. The workshop had once been his pride. Every tool had its place, every project organized and documented. Now it looked like a scrapyard had exploded inside a cave. Broken equipment hung from hooks on the walls. Failed inventions gathered dust on every surface. Empty bottles lined the windowsill, catching what little light managed to filter through the grimy glass. Owen rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the rough stubble that had grown over the past week. Or was it 2 weeks? Time had lost meaning after the accident. After the trial. After everyone in the colony decided he was guilty, no matter what the evidence said. 2 years ago, Owen had been somebody. The Colonial Engineering Corps had hired him straight out of academy, impressed by his designs for improved terraforming equipment. He had a team, a budget, and a future. Then the prototype malfunctioned during a demonstration. 2 of his colleagues died in the explosion. The investigation blamed faulty materials from a supplier, but the corporation needed a scapegoat. Owen was convenient. They stripped him of his license and his reputation. Nobody in the corporate world would hire a human whose name was attached to a disaster, even if he was innocent. The other species in the Galactic Concord already looked down on humans as adequate mechanics but never true innovators. The accident just confirmed their prejudices. Owen pushed himself up from the bench and stumbled toward a small refrigeration unit in the corner. It hummed weakly, struggling to keep working. He pulled out a bottle of cheap synthetic alcohol and took a long drink. It burned going down, but at least it was something to feel besides the constant emptiness. Outside, the storm grew worse. Wind rattled the workshop walls. Thunder rolled across the colony like distant artillery. Owen walked to the window and looked out at New Terra Colony spreading below his hillside location. Lights flickered in the residential districts. The commercial sector glowed bright even in the storm. Life continued for everyone else. They had jobs, families, purposes. What did Owen have? A failing workshop on the edge of town, barely enough credits to buy food, and a reputation so damaged that his last client had refused to pay him. The man had looked at Owen's repair work and sneered. Good enough for a human, he had said, then walked away without paying. Owen finished the bottle and set it with the others on the windowsill. He should eat something, should clean the workshop, should try to find work, should do a lot of things. Instead, he just stood there watching the rain wash down the dirty glass. A sound caught his attention. Not thunder, something else. A scratching noise coming from the front door. Probably just debris blown by the wind. Owen ignored it and turned back toward the workbench. The scratching came again, more insistent this time. Then a sound that was almost like a whimper. An animal, out here in this storm. The workshop sat far from the main colony, surrounded by scrubland and rocky hills. Most creatures knew better than to come near human settlements. Owen grabbed a flashlight from the bench and walked to the door. The scratching continued, desperate now. He hesitated with his hand on the lock. What if it was something dangerous? Green Hollow had some nasty wildlife, but that whimper sounded so pitiful. He unlocked the door and pulled it open. Wind immediately blasted into the workshop, scattering papers and tools. Owen shone the flashlight down at the threshold and froze. A small creature huddled against the doorframe, soaked and shivering. It was unlike anything Owen had seen before. Roughly the size of a house cat, it had scales instead of fur. They were dull gray, almost black, and several were cracked or missing. One wing hung at an odd angle, clearly broken. The other was folded tight against its body. 4 legs ended in small claws that scrabbled weakly against the metal floor. A long tail wrapped around its body for warmth, but it was the eyes that held Owen's attention. Large and luminous, they glowed with a faint amber light. They looked at him with an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for an animal. They also held something else. Fear, pain, and a desperate hope that made Owen's chest tighten. The creature made that whimpering sound again and tried to crawl forward. It collapsed after moving only a few inches. Owen stood there in the doorway, rain soaking through his shirt, staring at this impossible thing. Part of his mind screamed warnings. Unknown alien species could be dangerous. It could carry diseases. It could be someone's property or a protected specimen. Getting involved would only bring more trouble into his already ruined life. But another part of his mind, the part that had once dreamed of building things that mattered, saw something different. This creature was hurt and alone, abandoned in a storm with nowhere to go. Just like him, Owen made his decision. He bent down and carefully scooped up the creature, mindful of its injured wing. It was surprisingly light, as if its bones were hollow like a bird. It didn't struggle or try to bite. Instead, it curled against his chest, seeking warmth. He carried it inside and kicked the door shut against the storm. The workshop suddenly seemed less empty. Owen cleared space on the workbench and gently set the creature down. It watched him with those glowing eyes as he rummaged through a cabinet for his medical kit. Owen had no idea what he had just brought into his life. He did not know that this small, broken creature would change everything. He did not know about the ancient species thought extinct, the galactic conspiracy, or the revolution waiting to begin. Right now, in this moment, he only knew one thing. For the first time in 2 years, he had a reason to try. Sunlight crept through the workshop windows, painting stripes across the cluttered floor. Owen woke with his head on the workbench, neck stiff from the awkward position. He had not meant to fall asleep, but exhaustion had claimed him sometime after midnight while watching his unexpected patient. The creature still lay where he had left it, curled on a cushion of old shop rags. Its breathing came steady and even now, no longer the labored gasps from last night. Owen had spent hours cleaning its wounds with antiseptic, setting the broken wing with a makeshift splint made from carbon fiber strips, and wrapping everything in surgical tape. The work had focused his mind in a way nothing had for months. As if sensing his attention, the creature's eyes opened. That amber glow seemed brighter in the morning light. It raised its head and looked directly at him. Owen slowly reached out a hand. The creature sniffed his fingers, then pressed its scaled head against his palm. The scales felt warm, almost hot, with a texture like smooth stone. A low rumbling sound came from its chest, not quite a purr, but close. His stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. Owen laughed, the sound strange in the quiet workshop. When had he last laughed? He could not remember. The creature tilted its head, watching him with what looked like curiosity. Owen stood and stretched, joints popping. He needed food, and his guest probably did too. He walked to the refrigeration unit and pulled out a protein bar and some synthetic meat. He ate the bar himself, then offered the meat to the creature. It sniffed the meat, then turned its head away with what Owen could have sworn was disgust. He tried offering water. The creature lapped up a little but showed no real interest. What did it eat? Owen spent the next hour trying everything he had. Fruits from his emergency supplies, vegetables that were probably expired, even some dried insects he kept for composting. The creature refused everything. Frustrated, Owen sat back and studied his patient. The scales caught the light in interesting ways. They reminded him of metal, specifically titanium alloys. The wing structure looked almost mechanical despite being biological. Everything about this creature seemed designed for high heat and pressure. A crazy thought occurred to him. Owen walked to his scrap bins and pulled out some copper wire, a few iron bolts, and a piece of aluminum sheeting. He brought them back to the workbench and set them near the creature. It immediately perked up. The creature sniffed the metals, then carefully picked up a copper wire in its mouth. It chewed once, twice, then swallowed. The rumbling sound returned, louder this time. It grabbed an iron bolt next and crunched it between its teeth like candy. Owen watched in amazement as his patient devoured the metals with obvious pleasure. It ate slowly, savoring each piece. When the small pile was gone, it looked at him hopefully. He laughed again and went to gather more scrap. The creature ate everything he brought, showing preferences for certain alloys over pure metals. It particularly liked a failed experiment he had made. A complex titanium-copper blend that had turned out too brittle for its intended purpose. After the meal, the creature seemed much stronger. It stood on all four legs and took a few tentative steps. The splinted wing still hung awkwardly, but the creature moved with more confidence. It explored the workshop, sniffing tools and equipment with great interest. Owen pulled up his data terminal and began searching the galactic database. He entered search terms for scaled creatures, metal-eating species, and anything with bioluminescent eyes. Most results showed common animals or well-known aliens. Nothing matched what he had found. He expanded his search, digging into historical archives and xenobiology journals. Hours passed. The creature napped on its cushion while Owen read report after report. Most of galactic civilization was well documented. The Concord kept extensive records of every known species, their abilities, and their planets. Then Owen found something buried in an old archive from 300 years ago, a species called the Drachmir. The article described them as silicon-based life forms with metallic scales, capable of flight, and possessing remarkable intelligence. They had been partners with several civilizations in the early days of galactic exploration. But the article ended abruptly. Owen searched for more information and found only brief mentions. The Drachmir had been declared extinct after something called the Purge Wars. The details were classified, marked with Concord security seals he could not break. He looked at the creature sleeping peacefully on his workbench. Could this be a Drachmir? But they were extinct. The record said so clearly. Yet here was something that matched every description he could find. Owen reached out and gently stroked the creature's head. It made that rumbling sound again without waking. He needed a name for it. Calling it creature or patient felt wrong somehow. The amber glow in its eyes reminded him of embers in a dying fire, small but persistent, refusing to go out. Ember. The name felt right. Over the next few days, Owen and Ember fell into a routine. He would work on repairs for the few clients willing to hire him while she explored the workshop. She showed remarkable intelligence, learning to avoid dangerous equipment and watching his work with focused attention. Ember was growing too. Each day she seemed a little larger, her scales a bit brighter. The wing was healing well, thanks to a splint and her own rapid recovery. She could fold it properly now, though she could not fly yet. She had a strange habit. Whenever Owen threw away a failed project or broken tool, Ember would eat it. She seemed to prefer his mistakes, things made from multiple metals fused together. She would chew them thoughtfully, then curl up in a corner for a few hours. One morning, Owen found something odd. A perfect metallic sphere sat on the floor where Ember had been sleeping. It was about the size of his fist, smooth and seamless. The surface showed colors he had never seen in metal before, swirling patterns of silver and gold and copper. He picked it up. The sphere was surprisingly light but felt incredibly strong. Owen brought it to his analyzer and ran tests. The readings made no sense. The sphere was an alloy that should not exist. The metals were bonded at a molecular level, creating something stronger than steel but lighter than aluminum. Owen looked at Ember, who watched him with those intelligent eyes. She had made this. She had eaten his scrap metal and somehow forged this perfect alloy inside her body. His mind raced with possibilities. If Ember could create materials like this, materials that human technology struggled to produce even in advanced laboratories, then they could make something revolutionary. They could prove that humans were more than just adequate mechanics. They could show the entire galaxy what innovation really looked like. For the first time since the accident, Owen felt something besides despair. Hope stirred in his chest, small and fragile like the ember of a fire just beginning to burn. He sat down next to Ember and scratched behind her head ridges. She rumbled happily and pressed against his side. They made an odd pair, a disgraced human inventor and a supposedly extinct dragon hatchling. But maybe, just maybe, they could help each other become something more than broken and alone. Owen held the design up to the light, checking his calculations for the 5th time. The power cell blueprint looked solid, but he had thought that about projects before. Projects that ended in disaster. His hands trembled slightly as he set the paper down on the newly organized workbench. The workshop had changed dramatically over the past 2 weeks. Owen had cleaned every surface, organized his tools, and even fixed the flickering lights. Ember watched from her favorite perch on top of a storage cabinet, her scales now gleaming like polished chrome. She had grown to the size of a large dog, and her injured wing had healed completely. Owen looked up at her. She tilted her head, those amber eyes studying him with an intelligence that grew more obvious each day. Sometimes he felt like she understood not just his words, but his thoughts. He picked up a piece of scrap metal and held it up. Ember immediately perked up, wings spreading slightly. Over the past weeks, they had developed a working method. Owen would design something, calculate what materials he needed, and feed specific metals to Ember in precise ratios. She would process them, and within hours produce alloys with properties that amazed him. Today's project was ambitious, The standard power cells used throughout the colony were bulky and inefficient. They held barely enough charge to run basic equipment for a few days. Owen had designed something better, but it required materials that did not exist in any supply catalog, materials that Ember could create. Owen prepared the mixture carefully: copper, lithium, and a rare element called scandium that he had found in an old electronics kit. He added them to a container and brought it to Ember. She hopped down from her perch with surprising grace and sniffed the mixture. Then she began eating, taking time between each piece as if savoring the taste. When she finished, Ember curled up in the corner she had claimed as her sleeping space. Owen knew from experience that she would rest for several hours while her body did its remarkable work. He used the time to prepare the other components for his power cell. The design was elegant. A core of Ember's bioforged alloy would be surrounded by a containment field and connected to standard power terminals. If his calculations were correct, the unique properties of the alloy would allow it to hold significantly more energy while releasing it more efficiently. Ember woke as the sun began to set, casting orange light through the workshop windows. She made her way to Owen and gently dropped something at his feet. A cylinder of metal perfectly formed with a surface that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Owen picked it up carefully and brought it to his analyzer. The readings made him smile. The alloy had exactly the properties he needed. Better, actually. The molecular structure was even more stable than he had hoped. Working together felt natural now. Owen shaped the housing while Ember watched, occasionally making soft chirping sounds that he had learned meant approval or suggestion. When he seemed stuck on a problem, she would nudge specific tools toward him or draw his attention to certain materials. By midnight, the prototype was complete. A power cell the size of his palm, sleek and professional looking. Owen connected it to a testing rig and held his breath as he activated it. The readings climbed steadily. 500 units, 1,000, 2,000. The numbers kept rising until they stabilized at just over 10,000 units. A standard power cell held about 1,000 units. Owen stared at the display, not quite believing what he saw. He ran the test again. Same results. A third time. Still the same, he had done it. They had done it. Ember made a happy chirping sound and rubbed against his leg. Owen laughed and scratched her head ridges. She rumbled with pleasure, the sound vibrating through the workshop. But having a working prototype meant nothing if he could not sell it. Owen needed money desperately. The eviction notice still hung on his wall, a constant reminder that he had only 2 weeks left. He had to take a risk. The next morning, Owen cleaned himself up properly for the first time in months. He shaved, put on his least worn shirt, and even combed his hair. Ember watched the preparations with obvious interest. Owen knelt down beside her. She had become more than just a project or a patient. She was his partner and his friend. But bringing her to the colony marketplace would be dangerous. If anyone recognized what she was, if the wrong people found out about a Drachmere, Owen could not predict what might happen. He scratched behind her head ridges. "Stay here, stay safe. I will be back soon." Ember made a questioning chirp but settled onto her cushion. Those intelligent eyes watched him with what looked like concern. The marketplace buzzed with activity. Vendors from a dozen species hawked their goods while colonists bargained and traded. Owen made his way through the crowd, feeling exposed after weeks of isolation. He caught people staring at him, some with recognition, others with contempt. Mrs. Patel ran an electronics shop near the center of the market. She was human, one of the few who had not immediately condemned Owen after the accident. He found her arranging displays of various devices and components. She looked up as he approached, surprise crossing her weathered face. "Owen Fletcher, I had heard you were still around, but nobody sees you anymore." Owen set the power cell on her counter. "I need your help, Mrs. Patel. I have something I think you should see." She picked up the cell, turning it over in her hands. Her expression was skeptical but not dismissive. "What is this?" "A new type of power cell. 10 times the capacity of standard models. I need someone to test it. Someone who will give an honest assessment." Mrs. Patel studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I remember you before everything went wrong. You had talent. Real talent. Everyone knew it." She held up the power cell. "If this is what you say it is, I will test it fairly. But Owen, If you are trying to scam people, if this is some desperate attempt to make quick credits, you will only make things worse for yourself. I know, Owen said quietly, but this is real. I promise you that. She connected the power cell to one of her shop's testing units. Her eyebrows rose as she read the display. Without a word, she disconnected it and plugged it into her main shop power grid, replacing the standard cell that ran her lights, displays, and security systems. Everything powered up perfectly. The shop seemed to glow brighter than usual. Mrs. Patel looked at the monitoring display and then at Owen. Where did you get this? I made it. In my workshop. That is impossible. This kind of energy density, this stability, it would require materials that do not exist in any catalog I know. Owen met her gaze steadily. I found a new source. A new method. That is all I can say right now. She studied him for another long moment, then made a decision. Keep that cell connected for 1 week. If it performs as these readings suggest, I will buy 10 units from you, and I will spread the word to other shop owners. Fair? Owen felt relief wash through him. More than fair. Thank you, Mrs. Patel. Walking back to his workshop, Owen felt lighter than he had in years. He had hope now, real tangible hope. And when he opened the workshop door to find Ember waiting for him, making happy chirping sounds, he realized something else. He was not alone anymore. He had a partner, a purpose, and a chance to prove that humans could innovate with the best of them. The galaxy had written him off as a failure. They had dismissed humanity as adequate but never exceptional. It was time to show them all just how wrong they were. 3 ships descended through the morning clouds above New Terra Colony, their hulls bearing the silver and blue insignia of the Galactic Concord. Owen watched them from his workshop window, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. Ships like that meant official business, and official business rarely ended well for people like him. Ember sensed his tension. She had grown remarkably over the past month. Now the size of a small horse with scales that shone like burnished metal, she moved to his side and made a low questioning sound, pressing her head against his hand. Owen stroked her neck absently, his mind racing. The power cells had been a success beyond his wildest hopes. Mrs. Patel had bought 30 units after the first week. Word spread quickly through the colony, and suddenly Owen had more orders than he could fill. Money was coming in, enough to pay his rent and buy proper food, but success attracted attention, and attention brought trouble. A knock came at the workshop door, sharp and authoritative. Owen looked at Ember. They had prepared for this possibility. He pointed toward the back of the workshop where he had built a hidden compartment behind a false wall. She did not want to go, her amber eyes showing distress, but she trusted him. She squeezed through the opening, and Owen quickly sealed it shut, making sure the panel looked like just another section of the metal wall. He took a deep breath and opened the door. 3 figures stood outside. 2 were human security officers from the colony, looking uncomfortable. The third was a saurian, tall and reptilian with green scales and cold yellow eyes. He wore the formal uniform of a Concord commander, his rank insignia gleaming on his chest. The saurian spoke first, his voice a precise hiss. Owen Fletcher, I am Commander Varric of the Galactic Concord Enforcement Division. We are conducting an investigation into reports of illegal exotic materials. You will permit us to inspect your workshop. It was not a question. Owen stepped aside as they entered. The security officers looked apologetic but said nothing. Commander Varric moved through the workshop with the confidence of someone who expected to find exactly what he was looking for. He studied the workbenches, the tools, the storage cabinets. He picked up one of Owen's power cells and examined it closely. These devices have attracted considerable attention. The energy readings are inconsistent with known technology. You will explain their construction. Owen kept his voice steady. I developed a new alloy using experimental forging techniques. The specifics are proprietary. Varric's eyes narrowed. There are no registered patents. No applications for material certification. You are selling devices made from unknown substances without proper authorization. He pulled out a scanning device and began sweeping it around the workshop. The scanner beeped as it passed over various equipment and materials, standard readings. Then it approached the false wall where Ember hid. Owen felt his heart hammering. The scanner's tone changed, becoming more urgent. Varric froze. He moved the scanner back over the wall and the urgent beeping increased. There is a significant heat signature behind this wall, a living organism with high metabolic activity. His hand moved to the weapon at his belt. You will open this wall immediately. It is just a heating unit, Owen said, knowing it sounded weak. For metalworking. It runs hot. Do not insult my intelligence, human. Varric turned to the security officers. Open it. One of the officers, a young woman named Riley, stepped forward reluctantly. She examined the wall, found the release mechanism, and looked at Owen. He could see the apology in her eyes as she triggered the panel. The wall slid open, revealing the small space beyond. It was empty. Owen blinked in confusion. Where was Ember? Then he saw it. A ventilation duct in the back of the compartment hung open, leading deeper into the workshop's infrastructure. Ember had found another way out. Varric's expression darkened. He turned to the security officers. Search the entire building. Find whatever is producing that heat signature. They spent the next 2 hours tearing through Owen's workshop. They found nothing. Ember had vanished completely. Eventually, Varric called off the search, but his cold eyes promised this was not over. He confiscated several power cells and took detailed scans of the workshop. Before leaving, he stepped close to Owen. I know you are hiding something. The Concord has eyes everywhere. We will discover your secret, and when we do, you will face severe consequences. He paused at the door. Humans have always been adequate at following instructions. Do not mistake yourselves for innovators. That path leads only to disaster. After they left, Owen searched frantically for Ember. He found her 30 minutes later, squeezed into an old storage container in the basement he had forgotten existed. She was trembling, her scales darker than usual. Owen pulled her out gently and held her head against his chest. I am sorry. I am so sorry. She made soft, distressed sounds, and he felt her fear through whatever connection they had developed. That night, Owen could not sleep. He sat at his terminal, searching through every database he could access. The confrontation with Varric had raised too many questions. Why would the Concord care so much about power cells? Why send a commander for what should have been a routine inspection? He dug deeper into the restricted files using old access codes from his time with the Colonial Engineering Corps. Most were blocked, but he found fragments, references to something called the Purge Wars, mentions of the Drakmir, and one phrase that appeared repeatedly: technological supremacy through controlled extinction. Owen found a historical archive that had somehow escaped classification. It detailed the early days of galactic civilization, before the Concord's current structure. Back then, the Drakmir had worked alongside dozens of species, helping them develop advanced technologies through their unique bioforging abilities. But 300 years ago, everything changed. The Concord claimed the Drakmir had become dangerous, that their power threatened galactic stability. They orchestrated a systematic extermination. Every Drakmir was hunted down and killed. Their technology was seized and reverse-engineered. Owen felt sick as he read. The Concord's greatest innovations, the technologies that had built their empire, they were all stolen from the species they had destroyed. The advanced alloys, the revolutionary power systems, the materials that made faster-than-light travel possible, all of it came from Drakmir remains. A sound at the door made him spin around. His heart raced, expecting Concord officers. Instead, a figure in a hooded cloak slipped inside. Owen grabbed a wrench from his workbench. The figure raised empty hands. Peace. I am not your enemy. She pulled back her hood, revealing a human woman with short dark hair and sharp eyes. My name is Lyra. I am a xenobiologist, and I know what you have hidden here. Owen did not lower the wrench. I do not know what you are talking about. Yes, you do. You have a Drakmir hatchling. I saw the Concord ships arrive. I saw Commander Varric leave with power cells that could only be made one way. She stepped closer. Owen Fletcher, you are in terrible danger. The Concord knows about your partner. They may not have found her today, but they will return. And when they do, they will take her and kill you both. Why should I trust you? Lyra met his gaze steadily. Because I am part of a network that has been protecting the last surviving Drakmir for 300 years. We failed to save most of them, but a few eggs survived hidden away. Your Ember is precious beyond measure, and if you want to keep her alive, you need help. Behind Owen, Ember emerged from the shadows. She had been listening. She moved to his side, and he felt her tension through their bond. Lyra's expression softened as she saw Ember. She is beautiful, growing strong and healthy. You have done well caring for her. She looked at Owen again, but caring for her is not enough anymore. The Concord will not stop. They cannot allow a Drakmir to exist because if the galaxy learns the truth about where their technology came from, the Concord's power crumbles. Owen felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had thought he was just helping an injured creature. He had thought he was just making better power cells. But he had stumbled into something far larger and more dangerous. He looked at Ember, who watched him with those intelligent, trusting eyes. She had changed his life. She had given him purpose and hope when he had nothing, and now she was in danger because of him. Owen made his decision. He looked at Lyra. What do we need to do? Owen wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of oil across his skin. The engine core sat on his workbench, half assembled and humming with barely contained power. Ember lay nearby, her scales glowing faintly from the internal heat she had generated during the last forging session. They had been working for 3 days straight and exhaustion pulled at Owen's mind, but they were close. So close. Lyra had explained everything. If Owen and Ember could prove that partnership between humans and Drakmir produced technology beyond anything the Concord could create, it would expose the lie at the heart of galactic civilization. It would show that the Concord had not earned their position through innovation, but through theft and murder. The prototype engine was ambitious, perhaps impossibly so. Current faster-than-light drives took weeks to cross between star systems. Owen's design, if it worked, could do the same journey in days, but it required a core component that pushed Ember to her absolute limits, a quantum-stable containment matrix. Owen had designed it, calculated every specification, but no known material could withstand the forces involved. The temperatures inside the matrix would exceed those at the heart of a star. For even a brief moment, Ember would have to generate heat that could kill her. Owen looked at his partner. She had grown so much over the past months. Now the size of a riding horse, her scales gleamed like polished steel, and she could speak into his mind through their bond. Simple concepts at first, single words and emotions, but each day her communication grew clearer. Tired, her voice whispered in his thoughts, carrying warmth and affection despite the exhaustion. I know. Rest now, we can work more tomorrow. No. Ember raised her head, amber eyes blazing with determination. Finish tonight. They come soon, she was right. Owen felt it too. The Concord ship still orbited above the colony. Commander Varric had not left. He was waiting, watching, preparing. Other colonists had learned about the project somehow. Mrs. Patel brought food every day, refusing payment. A young mechanic named Daniel showed up one morning and simply started helping, organizing tools and running calculations. Others came too, drawn by something Owen did not fully understand. Hope, perhaps. The chance to see humans prove they were more than adequate. More than followers. That they could create something truly revolutionary. Daniel climbed down from the top of the engine assembly, his hands covered in grease. Cooling system is calibrated. It should handle the thermal output. But Owen, we are talking about temperatures that would vaporize most materials. If anything fails even for a microsecond, this whole workshop could melt. Owen nodded. He knew the risks. They all did. But sometimes the biggest risks brought the most important rewards. Mrs. Patel arrived as evening shadows stretched across the workshop. She brought dinner and news. Concord troops are gathering at their landing site. Varric has been bringing in equipment all day. Military scanners, weapons, a full assault team. How long do we have? Owen asked. Tomorrow. Maybe less. She looked at the engine prototype. Is it ready? Almost. We need the core, and that means Ember has to forge one more piece. Mrs. Patel walked to Ember and placed a hand on the dragon's neck. You are something special. I hope you know that. You have given this colony more than just new technology. You have given us belief in ourselves again. Ember made a soft rumbling sound, pressing her head against Mrs. Patel's shoulder. Owen prepared the materials for the final forge. Rare elements he had scraped together from every source he could find. Iridium, osmium, tungsten, and a dozen others, mixed in precise ratios. The components for something that should not be possible. He brought the container to Ember. She looked at the mixture, then at him. Through their bond, he felt her fear. Not for herself, but for him, for the humans who had become her friends. She was afraid of failing them. Owen knelt beside her and rested his forehead against hers. "You will not fail. We will do this together like everything else." She began eating the metal slowly. When the container was empty, she moved to the center of the workshop where they had cleared a large space. The other humans stepped back, giving her room. Ember closed her eyes. Her scales began to glow, first dull red, then orange, then brilliant yellow. The air shimmered with heat. Owen felt it even from 10 feet away, like standing near a furnace. The glow intensified, becoming white, then blue-white. The concrete floor beneath Ember cracked from the thermal stress. Daniel's voice was hushed. "The temperature readings are off the scale. Nothing should be able to generate this much heat biologically." Ember's scales blazed now, so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. She opened her mouth, and a sphere of light emerged, floating in the air. It was pure white, almost too bright to look at, and it hummed with contained power. The sphere slowly descended to the floor. As it touched the ground, the light faded, revealing a perfect sphere of metal with colors swirling across its surface like oil on water. It was the most beautiful thing Owen had ever seen. Ember collapsed. Owen rushed to her side. Her scales had gone dull gray and her breathing came in shallow gasps. She was cold to the touch, all her heat exhausted in that single forge. "Water," Owen shouted. "And metals. Copper, iron, anything she likes." They brought everything he asked for. Owen cradled Ember's head in his lap while she slowly drank and ate. Through their bond, he felt her exhaustion but also satisfaction. She had done it. Working quickly, Owen and Daniel installed the core into the engine assembly. The sphere fit perfectly into the containment housing. Owen activated the power systems and held his breath. The engine hummed to life. Readings stabilized across all displays. The core contained forces that should have torn apart any normal material. But Ember's bioforged matrix held steady. Perfect. They had done it. A working prototype of an engine that could change everything. Daniel laughed with disbelief. "This is incredible. Do you know what this means? This single engine could power a ship across the galaxy in a fraction of the current time. Cargo routes, exploration, everything changes." Mrs. Patel was not smiling. "It also means the Concord will do anything to take it and destroy the evidence of where it came from." As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring across the colony. The emergency broadcast system crackled to life. "Attention all colonists. Concord forces have declared martial law. Everyone must remain in their homes. Anyone found outside will be detained." Owen looked out the window. Concord troops were marching through the streets in formation. Airborne drones swept overhead, their scanners searching. He turned to find Lyra standing in the doorway. He had not heard her arrive. She was breathing hard, as if she had been running. "They are coming for you. Varric has authorization to use lethal force. He claims you are harboring an illegal, dangerous organism." Daniel grabbed a wrench. "Then we fight. With what?" Lyra gestured at the handful of people in the workshop. "Against trained soldiers with military weapons?" Owen looked at the engine, at Ember still recovering on the floor, at the friends who had helped them. They had created something amazing, but what good was it if no one ever knew? An idea formed in his mind. Crazy and desperate, but maybe their only chance. He walked to his communications array and began making connections. Broadcasting equipment, signal amplifiers, everything he had. "Help me set this up. We need to reach every system within range." Mrs. Patel understood first. "You are going to tell everyone. Show them everything. If we are going down, the truth goes with us. Let the galaxy decide what matters more, the Concord's lies or the possibility of real cooperation." They worked frantically, setting up cameras and transmitters. Owen positioned one camera to show the engine, another to show Ember. A third focused on him. Through the windows, he could see Concord troops surrounding the workshop. Commander Varric's voice boomed through amplifiers. "Owen Fletcher, you have 30 seconds to surrender yourself and the specimen. Refuse and we will enter by force." Owen activated the broadcast. The signal was crude but powerful, pumping out to every receiver in range. He looked into the camera and began speaking. "My name is Owen Fletcher. I am human, and I am about to show you something the Galactic Concord does not want you to see." The broadcast signal rippled outward from New Terra Colony, jumping from relay to relay across the star systems. Within minutes, millions watched their screens as Owen stood in his workshop, a magnificent dragon visible behind him. and an impossible engine glowing softly on his workbench. Owen's voice was steady despite the fear pounding through his veins. 300 years ago, the Galactic Concord told you that the Drachmir were extinct. They said these incredible beings were too dangerous to exist, but I am here to show you the truth. The Concord did not eliminate the Drachmir because they were dangerous. They killed them because they were competition. Outside, Commander Varick's voice cut through the night. "Shut down that transmission immediately or we will open fire." Owen ignored him. He gestured to the engine. This prototype was created through partnership between human engineering and Drachmir bioforging. It can cross star systems in days instead of weeks. The technology that built your civilization, the materials that power your ships and cities, they all came from Drachmir remains. The Concord stole everything and called it innovation. Ember moved into the camera's view. Even exhausted, she was magnificent. Her scales caught the light and her eyes blazed with intelligence. Through their bond, Owen felt her determination matching his own. He continued. "They told you humans were adequate but never exceptional. They told all the lesser species that we should be grateful for our place in their order. But look at what we created together. Not through theft or murder, but through cooperation." The workshop walls shook as something heavy impacted the door. Concord troops were breaching. Daniel and several other colonists moved to brace the entrance with equipment and tools. Owen's terminal began flashing. Messages were flooding in from across the galaxy. Some angry, some supportive, but all of them watching. The broadcast was spreading faster than the Concord could suppress it. Mrs. Patel called out from the terminal. "Owen, you need to see this. Other species are coming forward. Messages from dozens of worlds. They are sharing stories of conquered exploitation, of technologies taken by force, of civilizations suppressed." The door buckled inward. Conquered soldiers poured through, weapons raised. Commander Varick entered behind them, his eyes blazing with fury. "You are under arrest for harboring illegal specimens and broadcasting classified information." Owen stood his ground. "Classified? You mean hidden? There is a difference." Varick raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Owen. "You have committed treason against the Concord. The penalty is death." His finger moved to the trigger. Ember surged forward with a roar that shook the building. She placed herself between Owen and the soldiers. Wings spread wide, scales blazing with reflected light. Through their bond, Owen felt her absolute refusal to let them harm him. Varick adjusted his aim toward Ember. "The specimen will be destroyed along with you." "No." Mrs. Patel stepped forward, followed by Daniel and the other colonists. They formed a line between the soldiers and Owen. "You will have to go through all of us." More people appeared at the doorway behind the soldiers. Dozens of colonists, human and alien alike, drawn by the broadcast. They filled the entrance, faces set with determination. A colonist Owen recognized, an elderly man named George, spoke up. "We saw what you showed us. We heard the truth. Whatever happens here, the galaxy knows now." Varick's expression twisted with rage. "You are all complicit in harboring a dangerous organism. Step aside or face consequences." "She is not dangerous," Mrs. Patel said firmly. "She is a person. Intelligent and peaceful. Everything you told us about the Drachmir was lies." The standoff held for a long moment. Then Varick's communication device chirped urgently. He listened, his expression growing darker. "You will all remain here. Concord Command is issuing new orders." But the soldiers looked uncertain now. Some were watching the broadcast still playing on Owen's terminal. Others glanced at Ember, seeing not a monster but a being protecting someone she cared about. One soldier, a young human woman, lowered her weapon slightly. "Sir, the broadcast has reached Concord space. Command is receiving thousands of inquiries. Multiple species are demanding investigations." "I gave you an order," Varick snarled. "Yes, sir, but headquarters is calling for you specifically. The Concord Council wants this situation contained without further casualties." Varick's hand shook with barely contained fury, but he lowered his weapon. "This is not over. The Concord has maintained order for centuries. One human and one creature will not undo that." Owen stepped forward, feeling Ember's warmth at his back. "You are wrong. This is not about one human or one Drachmir. This is about proving that cooperation creates better outcomes than exploitation. That is what humans believe. That is what we will always believe." The broadcast continued. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Some supported the Concord, calling for Owen's arrest, but many more were asking questions. demanding answers, sharing their own stories of conquered suppression. A new message arrived marked with the seal of the Andromedan Coalition, a group of independent systems. Mrs. Patel read it aloud. They are offering sanctuary to Owen and Ember. They want to study the partnership, learn from it. More messages followed. The Kepler Alliance, the Outer Rim Confederacy. Even some Concord member species were breaking ranks, questioning official narratives. Varric received another communication. His expression showed his defeat even before he spoke. Concord Command is ordering a tactical withdrawal, pending investigation. He looked at Owen with cold hatred. You have bought yourself time, human. But the Concord has existed for 1,000 years. We will survive this challenge as we have survived all others. He gestured to his troops. They withdrew slowly, keeping weapons ready but not aimed. Within minutes, the workshop was empty of soldiers. Colonists erupted in cheers. Daniel hugged Owen while Mrs. Patel wiped tears from her eyes. Ember made happy rumbling sounds, pressing her head against Owen's chest. But Owen knew this was just the beginning. The broadcast had started something that could not be stopped. The galaxy was questioning, investigating, demanding truth. Change was coming, but it would not be easy. Over the following weeks, the situation transformed rapidly. The Concord tried to maintain control, but too many species were asking uncomfortable questions. Archaeological teams began excavating old Drakmir sites. Historians reviewed classified documents. The evidence of systematic genocide and theft mounted. Lyra's network came forward, revealing they had protected 7 other Drakmir eggs over the centuries. With the threat reduced, they brought the hatchlings to New Terra Colony. Ember met her own kind for the first time, and Owen watched her joy through their bond. A coalition formed, species who had suffered under conquered exploitation banding together. They called themselves the Free Systems Alliance, and they invited humanity to be a founding member, not because humans were the strongest or the oldest civilization, but because a single human had chosen to help rather than exploit, to partner rather than dominate. Owen's workshop transformed into something larger. The Liberty Institute for Cooperative Technology, they called it. Species came from across the galaxy to study and learn, not just how to work with Drakmir, but how to build partnerships across different forms of life and thought. The engine prototype led to real production models. Trade routes that had taken months now took weeks. Exploration expanded into regions previously too distant to reach. The galaxy grew smaller and more connected. 6 months after that desperate broadcast, Owen stood in his new workshop. It was clean and well organized, filled with advanced equipment and staffed by researchers from a dozen species. But he had kept one section exactly as it had been, the cluttered corner where he had first treated an injured hatchling in a storm. Ember rested beside him, now fully grown and magnificent. Her scales shone like starlight, and her presence filled the workshop with warmth. 3 younger Drakmir played nearby, learning the basics of bioforging under her watchful eyes. A message came through the terminal. Another colony had found something unusual. Strange readings from a cave system. Could be geological, could be something else. They wanted someone to investigate. Owen looked at Ember. Through their bond, he felt her excitement matching his own. There were more discoveries waiting. More chances to prove that cooperation beat exploitation. More opportunities to show what humans could do when they chose partnership over domination. He grabbed his coat. Ember spread her wings, ready to fly. The younger Drakmir chirped with excitement, wanting to come along. Owen smiled. Not long ago, he had been broken and alone, seeing no future beyond the next bottle. Now he had purpose, partners, and a galaxy that was slowly learning to build rather than steal. He climbed onto Ember's back, something they had practiced until it felt natural. She launched into the air with powerful wing beats, carrying them up through the atmosphere toward the waiting ship. Behind them, Liberty Station gleamed against the stars, a symbol of what was possible when species worked together, when humans chose compassion over convenience, when innovation came from cooperation rather than conquest. The galaxy had called humans adequate for so long, had dismissed them as followers, never leaders, as mechanics, never engineers. But Owen and Ember had proved something essential. Humans did not need to be the strongest or the oldest or the most advanced. They just needed to be willing to help those in need, to see potential where others saw threats, and to believe that building together was always better than tearing apart. That was humanity's real strength. Not weapons or wealth or technology, but the stubborn, persistent, sometimes foolish belief that everyone deserved a chance. That cooperation could solve problems force never could. That partnership would always triumph over exploitation. Ember's voice whispered in Owen's mind as they broke through the atmosphere. Ready for another adventure? Owen looked at the stars stretching endlessly before them, full of mysteries and possibilities. Always, this is what we were meant to do. Build together. Below them, New Terra Colony continued its work. Humans and Drakmir and dozens of other species learning from each other, creating things that none of them could have achieved alone. Proving every single day that the future belonged not to the strong or the old or the cruel, but to those willing to reach out a hand in friendship. The Concord still existed, still powerful, still influential. Change came slowly to institutions built over centuries. But the truth was out now, spreading through the galaxy like light through darkness. And light, once kindled, was very hard to extinguish. Owen Fletcher, the failed inventor who had once seen no future, now flew among the stars with a dragon at his side and hope in his heart. The galaxy had written him off, had dismissed his species as unimportant. They had all been wrong. And every day, in workshops and laboratories and colonies across the stars, humans were proving just how wrong, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of choosing to help, to build, and to believe in something better. That was humanity's roar. Not loud or violent, but persistent and true. The sound of people who refused to give up, who saw worth in the abandoned and broken, and who believed, despite everything, that tomorrow could be better than today. And in the end, that belief changed everything.